Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to the channel, Romel Private Investigator. I'd like to bring you some information regarding an incident that took place in the state of Arizona, in particular, Phoenix, Arizona, just outside of Phoenix, the Sonoran Desert, if I'm pronouncing the name correctly. A young man by the name of Daniel Robinson was said to have been lost somehow, presumably in the desert. 24-year-old young geologist with some handicap provisions. He was born without his right hand, and he doesn't have full extension of his right forearm, but nonetheless quite an achiever, as stated by the family. And so the long and short of things, he managed to get a job. I believe he's from he's South Carolina, I believe. And he managed to get a job doing his geology work in Arizona. And he was assigned to an area in the desert, actually. I believe it's some 70 or so miles, if I'm not mistaken, from the Phoenix, Arizona area. And he was to meet with a colleague, co-worker, if you will. And somehow this morning when they met, and I'm just generalizing the story now, there's a young lady. Her name is Sunny Shea. Sunny Shea. She has a YouTube. She does a very, very good job of explaining all that took place. Basically, what I'm trying to do here today is just give you a sense of, from an investigative view, an investigative look, what type of things you might engage in an incident like this with respect to trying to find out what the heck happened. And it's a mess. It's a mess. So in any event, what happens is, while at work, he at some point is said to have walked away. This is by the other gentleman that was working with him. He walks away, seems to have been a little out of himself. Now, I don't know how well they know one another. How do you know when someone's out of their self if you've just met them? Perhaps some disposition that was uncomfortable one way or another. So as Daniel is walking off, he goes to his vehicle. Now we're talking about the desert, hot as hell. He walks away, he gets into his vehicle, and he presumably waves as he moves off. So the gentleman that was with him was a bit concerned because he was saying that he was not driving towards civilization, but driving further out into the desert itself. And that was a concern to him. At some point prior to him leaving, that being his co-worker, he reached out to the job and mentioned that Daniel had left and presumably would get back to them. Maybe he's taking a day off, something along those lines. Now, as this progresses, what also happens is, at some point, Daniel, and this is stated by there was a federal agent that was out in the desert doing some target practice with his children. I don't know how the children, what the ages of the children was or were, but he had noticed Daniel twice. And at the last time, as he noticed Daniel, he approached Daniel, and Daniel was in the process of cleaning his car. Yeah, that's a little questionable. In the middle of the desert, hot as hell, and you're cleaning your car. I don't know. Maybe he was taking something in and out of his car, and that was presumed to be cleaning. But when I think of cleaning a car, you got a rag, you got some water, you got some soap, and you're washing it down. Maybe he was wiping his windows. I don't know. But in any event, the federal agent had a conversation with him. Daniel mentioned to him that he and others were in the area doing some work, and where he was shooting was probably not the best place to be shooting. So in turn, what he did was he designated an area that might be more appropriate for the agent doing his shooting practice. Now, to me, this is kind of where things get a little interesting. It's all after the fact. Because what ultimately happens is the dad comes down, his father, David Robinson, a very noble man, actually a veteran as well. He comes down because he was he was not happy with the way the police were handling the matter. He initially asked for some air support. 1 minute he was going to get it. The next minute, for whatever reasons, he couldn't get the air support. At least not when he needed it. And I emphasize needed. In the desert, it's a very challenging place to be. So obviously, whatever you're going to do, you need to do it in a hurry. In any event, as things move on, there are searches conducted. There are some air searches conducted by the police department. Also, the police department had covered a certain amount of area with respect to where Daniel was working, and some degree outwards. And that was also covered by the father, who had people get together. And this guy, what's his name? Jeff McGrath. Jeff McGrath. That's the name. From my perspective, me being an investigator, I'm watching the things he's talking about, the things he's doing. This guy's sharp. So in any event, as things move on, we do get to a point where these areas that were covered, some 3 weeks, nearly a month later, I think the date was actually July the 19th. Now, this incident took place June the 23rd, July the 19th. They find a vehicle in a ravine. Now, hang in there with me. Follow with me on this one. They find a vehicle in the ravine. So my initial question was, how deep was that ravine? Oh, it was pretty deep. But here's what I'm looking at. The vehicles found in the ravine, it turns out this was an area that was covered by the air support, covered by the police department, and also covered by the manpower, somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 or more people who were assisting Dad, David Robinson, and they covered this area. Now all of a sudden, out of nowhere, what did it, boom, drop out of the sky or something, out of nowhere, this vehicle shows up at the bottom of a ravine. What also happens is his clothing, no mention made of the shoes that I have seen, but his clothing also outside of the Jeep. His body nowhere to be found, clothing outside of the Jeep, including his ID and a cell phone. Come on. It's not making any sense. So one of the things that's said by the authorities is that he had an accident with the vehicle, probably had some degree of head trauma, and just wandered off. And there's virtually no telling of where he has gone, especially or how far. And that's the question to me. How far could he have gone in that heat? Clearly, if he's in that vehicle, he's got to have the air conditioner on. He's got to have it on. When he gets out of the vehicle, some degree of logic might suggest, well, he may have felt he had too much on with respect to clothing and took the clothing off. Possibility. How likely it is, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. That could happen in extreme heat. But here's my question. How is it a vehicle pops up, as I said earlier, out of nowhere in an area that had been combed by the police, by air support, and by several people walking individual paths? Now, the distance was approximately 2 miles away from where Daniel was working. That is curious. And it gets even more interesting. This investigator, kudos to this guy, he gains access to the OBD system. That's the onboard diagnostic system that we all have in our cars. And as he reads the information from it, what he discovers is that approximately 4 hours, if I have this correct, approximately 4 hours from the time, the estimated time that Daniel had left his place of where he was conducting his work for the company he worked for, there was an impact of some sort, which caused the deployment of the airbags. What he also noted was that after that, the vehicle had been driven an additional 11 miles. Now, that's quite a distance, 11 miles. Of course, it's covered in a quick time in a Jeep. But remember, the desert, not all flat like sometimes we might see on television. You have uneven pavement. You have the cactuses. Of course, you have the wildlife as well. You have ravines. You have hills. You have mountain-like structure. You see. So this is pretty much rough travel. And basically, it's my understanding that if you're going to get through it, you will definitely have to have a four-wheel vehicle in order to do it. And even with that, you have to be very, very cautious. It's not the place you want to try to see how fast you can get from point A to point B.